Hey everyone, welcome to the Redmen TV and your latest Liverpool news update. My name is Dan Clubb. I'm delighted to say the man to my left is Lewis Aspinall. Lewis, how you doing, mate? You okay?
I'm all right. I had to sit through that dross of 90 minutes last night. But
yeah.
We move. Pre-season coming soon, so yeah.
Yeah, international football, well and truly out the way. I had a marathon night last night of international footy. I obviously watched the Euros final, watched Spain conquer England. Make of that what you will in terms of whether you're happy or otherwise. I'm not going to sway your thinking one way or the other. And then I actually had a little bit of kip and then got back up to watch the Copa America final overnight, which I was pretty dismayed by the fact that it was delayed. I mean, I fully understand why when you see the scenes before the game and stuff like that. It was absolutely atrocious, and whatever's gone wrong in sort of the organisation of that event, it's gone categorically wrong. There's no two ways about that. But when I woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning UK time to watch that game, and then immediately found out it'd been delayed by half an hour, and then a further 45 minutes, I was just sat there like literally in the middle of the night.
Is this worth it?
Any chance you could start this game? And then I found out in sort of the 70th minute, having waited up for the game to start, that they were decided they were going to do extra time, with it being 0-0, because all the way through the Copa America it'd been straight to pens, and I was like, okay, straight to pens, get to bed about 4. No extra time for that one. Cheers Comebol, massively appreciate it. Hope everyone's well, first and foremost, before we dive into some news stories. Craig Eaton says, what's happening, Reds? Now that nonsense is over, referring to international football, it's bringing on the signings. Let's wait and see. I think we are expecting it to sort of heat up over the coming days and weeks. That's certainly what we hope anyway, because I think we could all admit that we could do with 1 or 2 arrivals that strengthen that squad a little bit. Supernova, you'll never walk alone. Alcaraz win, Spain win, good day all round. Yeah, it certainly was for the Spanish-speaking Argentina thrown into the mix as well in that one. Sound, let's do it then, Lewis. Let's dive into it. Marc Guehi we'll begin with today. This has come from Give Me Sport, and Fabrizio Romano has been speaking to them about Liverpool's admiration of Marc Guehi. I think actually before we dive in, Marc Guehi is one of the few England players to come away from that tournament with any sort of real credit in the bank. He kind of passed for flying colours where a lot of others faded away. Romano has said, Marc Guehi has been linked to Liverpool. I can tell you that Liverpool have been scouting the player for a long time. He's a player they like for sure. But at the moment, I can't tell you Liverpool are negotiating for Marc Guehi, because at the moment, the situation is quiet around him. Obviously, there was the Euros, so after the Euros, which is where we are now, we will see the appreciation of Liverpool for the player. I can confirm to you, but not only Liverpool, there are also other clubs, for example, Arsenal and many others who appreciate the player. But in terms of a bid, in terms of negotiations, it is a different story, i.e. nothing's happening. Now, he mentions there after the Euros, we will see Liverpool's appreciation of the player. Lewis, your appreciation of the player, do you think this is somebody who, again, a lot of us are talking about the possibility of defensive reinforcements and maybe even one who can play on the left side? Marc Guehi float your boat at all?
He does in the sense of what he can do. I don't think he's a bad player, and like you said before, he's one of the few who have come away from that tournament in better stead than when they went in with England, because no one particularly shone for that team. The good thing about Marc Guehi is he's got great recovery pace. There was a moment against, I think it was Slovakia, he made a mistake, made up for it himself. For a high line that we tend to play, obviously it might be different under slot, but if it was the old regime, for example, he'd fit right in. Great recovery pace, very good on the ball. The only thing throwing me off is the valuation for a start, because nowadays money is a very precious thing, especially with all the restrictions and financial play coming into it. Is he worth 60 million onwards? Maybe. Yeah. But to us right now, is that really what we need to be spending that high amount of money on? I'm not too sure. No,
it's an interesting one. In terms of sort of boxes ticked, he's 24 years of age. He's played 16 times now for England, so a relatively decent amount of experience behind him. And in terms of his club career as well, just scrolling down to get the full sort of picture on that number. But he's got a good sort of wealth of Premier League experience behind him. 25 appearances last time around, 37 the year before, 36. So that's 3 seasons now. He's in the Championship on loan at Swansea prior to that as well. That's 3 full seasons, more or less, worth of Premier League experience under his belt. So I think if Liverpool, Richard Hughes was looking at sort of things they wanted from their next signing, I think Marc Guehi's ticking a few of them boxes. Now, what he doesn't have is he's not left-footed. Although he plays on the left-hand side and he has actually done a little bit of left-back, I think he is predominantly right-footed, but his left is equally as strong. But there are people out there who would just immediately look at that and go, not left-footed, don't necessarily want him. You know what I mean? So I quite like the Marc Guehi links, if I'm being honest. I'm not sure. You mentioned the price there. Last summer was sort of 60, 70 million. Obviously, we know Crystal Palace have just lost Michael Olise for around the 60 mark. There's a chance they lose Eberechi Eze as well. He's got release clause hanging over his head. Palace will not want to lose Marc Guehi because somebody mentioned earlier on he was probably the pick of the Palace performers in what was quite a strong end to the season, especially. But do you think Palace might not have a choice in this one in the nicest possible way? Because, again, he feels like a player who's destined for, with all due respect, a bigger Champions League level club, potentially. And he's only under contract until 2026. So, albeit that's still 2 years, they're in a position now, Palace, whereby they've either got to tie him down to a new deal on probably better terms he's currently on, or they sell.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, he was at Chelsea for a reason. He came from their squad for a good reason. I know they've got a history of losing all these talented players as they go on, but everyone can see the potential. Everyone can see the ability he's got. And I think you're absolutely right. If he doesn't get signed to a contract this season, he's only got 1 year left. And at that point, he's going to be majorly considered in his future. You find it after many competitions, World Cups, Euros, Copa Americas, there's 1 or 2 players who everyone suddenly wants. Palace at the moment, if a big club comes in with a big money offer, like you said, they've just lost Olise. They're going to need to bring in reinforcements. They would have a huge amount of money to play with. And Marc Guehi, as much as they wouldn't want to lose him, he just does feel like he needs a bigger club. He seems fitted to playing in at least the European competition next season.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think, again, off the back of what was a very impressive Premier League campaign, to sort of double down on that and your stock to rise even more with a really quite impressive European campaign as well in terms of for England. I think he is. Palace look like they're ripe for picking. Almost the end of their season being so impressive has sort of brought the spotlight on them. And that bigger clubs are going, oh, I quite like him. Somebody mentioned Joachim Andersen as well before, who I really like as well. I don't think he's necessarily what Liverpool need right now, whereas I think Marc Guehi is actually more suitable to that. Plus, the homegrown factor comes into it as well, another box tick there. So, one to keep an eye on. Fabrizio Romano claiming that Liverpool are keen on the player, and that doesn't shock me massively. Somebody mentioned in the chat just there, you can see it on the screen, about Gonzalo Inacio, another player heavily linked with Liverpool of late, particularly when Ruben Amorim looked destined to become a manager at one point. But this has come from Court Offside. They've claimed that Liverpool are making progress in negotiations over potential transfer for Sporting Lisbon. It's just Sporting CP these days nowadays. Centre-back Gonzalo Inacio as they look for a replacement for Virgil van Dijk. Sources close to the situation have informed Court Offside there is some uncertainty around Van Dijk's future at Liverpool. That's by the by to me. Gonzalo Inacio, €60 million release clause, which brings you in around the £55 million mark, is left-footed, has played at left-back as well. So if you were inclined to want that for this Liverpool squad, there's a couple of positives there. Do you like him? And again, I'll come back to what I said a moment ago. It felt like 4 or 5 months ago now, maybe even more than that, actually, we were really having a close look at Inacio. What were your thoughts then? Yeah,
Inacio's one of these players who he's been linked to big clubs now for a good while. And like you said then, when Ruben Amorim was supposedly meant to be coming in, it's the same thing as when Alonso was linked to us. It was, he's going to bring Frimpong, he's going to bring all these players. Inacio is talented, and like you touched on the release clause there, you're looking at, that's a guaranteed, that is how much you'd be paying for a left-footed player, which people are crying out for. I think he can play left-back, or he's capable of doing it.
He's done it a bit,
Whereas Guehi is going to be upwards of that amount for a player who you're going to be in a bit of a dogfight for other teams trying to get him. Inacio makes a bit more financial sense. He's a player who can fit the system quite well. Very versatile, which we know that Liverpool enjoys, like Joe Gomez, etc., who can play in multitude of different positions. Inacio makes a bit more sense to me. Obviously, you don't know what you're going to get from the Portuguese league. You could go down the sort of the Ronaldo route, for an example, or you could go down the Markovic route of players coming from the Portuguese league where you just don't know what you're going to get. I think he's a very talented player, a lot of good physicality about him, magnitude of different positions he can play. I see no reason to go for Guehi when Inacio makes a bit more financial sense, and given the way we operate business-wise, just makes a bit more sense to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, absolutely. Yeah, and also, you know, what he doesn't have, obviously, is the homegrown factor as well. How sort of close to the win Liverpool are with that, I'm not entirely sure. I imagine not very, given the crop of youngsters we have at our disposal. I don't think we'll have too much of a problem filling those spots. But he is 22, so he's 2 years younger than Marc Guehi as well. So, yeah, profile-wise, there's quite a lot to like there. And again, another name Liverpool have been linked with excessively, really, down the years as well. So for what it's worth, just in around this topic, before we move on to different positions, I'm desperate for us to sign a centre-half this summer. I really like Ibrahim Konate, obviously, I think he's absolutely exceptional on his day. Joel Quanta was unbelievable last season. Virgil van Dijk be doing Virgil van Dijk things forevermore, it feels like. Joe Gomez, I love him being that utility man who can just fill into different roles across the back four. That's him for me now in terms of the foreseeable future. So therefore, I'd like us to do a bit of business. And there's more reports, we're not going to discuss them today, over the weekend of Sepp Vandenberg being unsettled. And it felt like at some point last week he was just happy with his loss. He was going to give him a chance to shine in pre-season and really have a crack at it. But all of a sudden, I'm not quite sure that's the case anymore. So if he was to leave, as looks to be the case now, we'd have to sign one, in my opinion.
Yeah, we need to. And we've lost Matip as well. So we're in we don't want to end up in a situation like we did in 2020, 2021, where every main centre-back gets injured and we're relying on like Nat Phillips and Reece Williams, no disrespect to them, but we need depth. We're going to need players coming in. Like you said, Virgil, his future is technically up in the air. He's still coming to the end of his contract. We don't know what's going on there. Who's to say that a club doesn't come in and think, we could use a player like Joe Gomez, you know, we can take him off. Aston Villa, they seem like a good club you go to. So we need to fail to prepare to fail. We need to bring in these players before we consider losing anyone. Just because we've got these players now doesn't mean we're going to have them in a month. We're going to need depth. We're in a lot more competitions next season with a lot more games. We can't be relying on Virgil, who I think he played like the third most minutes in like world football or European football last season. He's in his 30s. We need to start planning for the future now. And as much as we don't like to think of it, we're not going to have Van Dijk for too much longer, so it is time to start preparing. No,
absolutely, yeah. I think it's a similar conversation with the Mohamed Salah one, isn't it? In terms of you want that understudy in the building ready to go, because you don't want them to suddenly walk away in whatever shape or form that is, whether it be end of the contract, you know, a new challenge comes about and they make that move, and you're scrambling around trying to find a replacement for somebody who's been so talismanic and is essentially irreplaceable. Get them in the building, get them learning, get them sort of drip fed into the side, and then when that time does come, that sort of passing the mantle feels like it should be more straightforward anyway. No, I agree with you on that one. A lot of people talking about why didn't Liverpool go for Calafiori. Listen, I'm with you. Ultimately, I've been singing from that hymn book for a week or so now. I do not understand personally, but I'm sure everything will be fine. Let's hope. Anyway, Mohammed says Vandenberg is good, however, he doesn't fit the profile we're looking for at centre back. Craig says I like the look of Sepp, but rumours always been a bit of an arse about it. Again, that kind of was the case seemingly a few weeks back, and it felt like they'd sort of put that to bed. But again, over the weekend, more reports from Holland, I think it's PSV, the team sniffing around, saying that he wants out and he wants that move. I think what it appears like, just to touch on the Vandenberg, I don't want to put words into his mouth, but it appears as though even a shot at being the 4th/5th choice centre-back isn't enough to appease him. And I guess, given the taste of first-team football he's had previously, obviously Preston, Schalke didn't really work, but certainly at Mainz last season, and he really shone in that Mainz side as well. He's probably had that real crack at it, 30, 40 games, and gone, well, I like that. I want to keep doing more of that. And all of a sudden, the prospect of playing 10, 15 games in cup competitions doesn't really appeal to him anymore. So I guess you can't blame him.
No, not at all. And he's at the age now where he needs to be playing good football. I think when Klopp brought him in, he sort of anticipated that our backline was going to move on a bit quicker than it did. And he was going to maybe go into that first team a bit sooner than he has been. I don't think having the weaker pre-season without all these first-team players has helped them, because I think it may have given him a sort of false sense of, I'm the big dog. Yeah, exactly. Right, and now everyone's come back. He's found himself back down the pecking order. So, look, Vandenberg is, the way Slot handles this situation is going to determine a lot of what we're expecting to see from him. If he handles it very, very well, it puts him in great stead with the fans. If it drags out and it becomes a big PR nightmare, it can really have a detriment on him. You can get good money for a young centre-back who's not fit into the squad properly. We don't want behavioural issues, especially during this transition. So if he is causing problems, it makes sense to move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got 3 news stories all in one go to bring in just now. I mean, they all come from the Bundesliga in Germany, of course. First up, they all come from Paisley-Gate to us. So thank you very much to them for sort of aggregating all of this in a neat order for us. Joshua Kimmich, a name obviously very familiar to all of us, absolute world footballing superstar. Lewis, I'll get your take on this, but for me, there are only a select few clubs that Kimmich would go to by all accounts, and his future at Bayern Munich, much like Van Dijk's a moment ago, you mentioned there, is uncertain. He's in the final year of his contract coming up now. I don't think he's going to sign a new deal. Bayern obviously won't want to allow him to leave for free, and again, as mentioned, Liverpool, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester City, Arsenal and Chelsea as the clubs who he'd go to, and they're willing to sign him. For Liverpool, do you think this is something we should be looking at? And have our fingers been burnt by the Thiago deal? Do they sort of cross over at all in your mind, or can you look at them completely separately?
I I don't, because Kimmich on one hand, we've seen what he's done. You know, he's a very, very good player. On the other hand, how much is he going to cost on wages? How much are we going to be paying for a player who he might be in the last year of his deal, but he's a big name? For me, I'd much rather see a long-term appointment at CDM. This feels very much, and no disrespect to Endo, because I think he was fantastic last season, it just feels like a sort of stopgap player in the same sort of way that Endo did when we signed him. As much as I'd enjoy seeing him in the team because of name value, we've seen at Man United, big name players don't necessarily translate over on big wages, short contracts. We could sign him for 15 million. We're probably not going to recoup that by the time we need them gone. And we have a lot of players on high wages. He's a Champions League winner, Bundesliga winner, integral part to their team for a long time. He's going to demand high wages. Doesn't make a lot of sense for me in that regard.
Okay, fair enough. I think what you'd make up in not paying a ridiculously high transfer fee, you probably would quickly eat up in the wages. I tend to agree with you on that. And Nico Williams falls into that category as well, but in a completely separate conversation. Jeremy Frimpong, according to Bild again over in Germany, Frimpong has a 60% chance of leaving the Bundesliga and has a release clause of €40 million of Bayer Leverkusen, which will expire this week. This one for me, just to give my sort of 2 pennies worth on this. I mean, first and foremost, what a footballer. What a player. Absolutely integral to Bayer Leverkusen's triumphant season last time around. Xabi Alonso got the best out of him and some. Just brilliant. So attacking. So skillful. So quick and direct. Love him to pieces. However, it's almost impossible to have this conversation without talking about Trent Alexander-Arnold, obviously, and Conor Bradley. And the Conor Bradley thing, he was so good. Let's not forget that last season. I just don't see, even at the 33 million, as brilliant as he is, unless you're going to sort of throw all your hats into the ring and say you're going to be a backup right winger, and that's where we see you in the future. Even at that ridiculously bargain price, it doesn't make a whole load of sense.
No, it doesn't. At this point, it just feels sort of like get him in for the sake of it if we did. And Frimpong's class, we all know what he's capable of. We saw it at points for the Netherlands as well. Like, he's a very, very good player. Right back, right wing. He's so talented. Trent, midfield experiment didn't work for England. I think the demand to move him there for Liverpool is probably going to be less and less. Keep him at right back where we know he flourishes. And like you said, Conor Bradley was fantastic. As much as I'd love to have Frimpong in the team, barring Trent leaving or barring Bradley leaving, it just doesn't make sense to sign another right back when we've got other positions on the pitch which need addressing more than that area.
No, I agree. And if Liverpool had a transfer budget, we're not privy to this information, of course. If Liverpool had a £250 million transfer budget, for example, and you were going to shell 33 of it out on Frimpong, you'd be going, why not? But we don't work like that by and large. This summer could be a complete exception. That may well be the case. And again, in which case, why not go and do it? But we usually work to quite a strict budget, whereby if we do have two positions that we need to go and strengthen, we might only have 120 million with which to do it. Therefore, don't waste inverted money, inverted commas, money on somewhere you don't exactly need. Exactly agree with you. Daniel Marlin, last but not least, when it comes to the German, this one caught me off guard. When I first seen sort of the article and it was Liverpool sort of linked with 3 Bundesliga players, I just assumed Karim Adeyemi would be in amongst them, but it's not. It's Daniel Marlin. Now, what he is, Lewis, is he's supremely versatile. And actually, he's got better end product than Karim Adeyemi, to be honest with you. Dutch, of course, as well. 37 caps for the Netherlands, 11 goals. He's 25 years of age and can play very much across the front line, which is a big tick in his box. 13 goals, 3 assists last season in 27 appearances. Is there any legs in this one? And I guess the main positive is that versatility. You mentioned right wing, centre forward, left wing. Yeah.
But is that not the same problem that we've had with Gakpo in the sense of we don't know where to put him because, what exactly, they just don't know what to do. Yeah, what is he? Marlin is one of those ones again, like it feels like we've been linked with him for years now. Former Arsenal player, did very good at PSV. Dortmund, don't think he set the world on fire like a lot of people would. He obviously was coming in after Jadon Sancho, I believe. Didn't quite live up to that hype, but at the time no one else could. He's a very good player, but until someone leaves, which I'm hoping none of them particularly do, but until someone goes, it just feels like another player you're piling on top when you've got 5 class players all competing for a multitude of positions. And I don't want him to fall into the same trap as Gakpo of, is he better on the left? Is he better in the middle? He's not going to play on the right because Salah's there. So you have to change everything to fit him in. As talented a player I think he is, again, I know I keep saying it and it's becoming a bit of a cliche. There's money to spend on other positions, centre-back, left-back maybe. it just doesn't seem necessary.
No, I agree. I'd want more of a specialist right winger who, again, is going to be a successor. If we need a sick forward, it feels like it's there.
Yeah.
I think it was exclusively there. So, yeah, I'm with you. And maybe somebody even a couple of years younger whose ceiling's a little bit higher. We kind of know what Dani Olmo is now.
Yeah.
And it's a good player who would definitely be a smart addition to any squad. Certainly as like a sick forward.
Yeah.
That's a crazy option to have. But I agree. I think if we need to spend a bit of market in the attacking, a bit of money in the attacking department, it wouldn't be on Dani Olmo.
Like a Bakayoko or something.
Someone like that. I like Bakayoko, yeah. Somebody before mentioned sort of a Seb Vandenberg swap deal for him as well, which I think makes a lot of sense. He wouldn't cost you the earth anyway, Bakayoko, for what it's worth. So somebody asked a moment ago, I've got the chat on the screen there, would you consider playing Trent left back and that having Conor Bradley at right back? Is that a thing? I mean, that never even crossed my mind.
No, it didn't cross mine either. But can you think of a lot of Trent on his left? I can't think of many options where he's been putting the ball in on his left foot. Like,
it'd be all inverted, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Everything he did would be inverted.
I mean, you could, but then what you do if, like, I know Robertson's getting older, but he's still justified having a spot in this team. And again, it just feels like you're forcing square pegs into round holes just to get Trent into the squad and Bradley in the squad. But don't fix wasn't broken. And yeah.
No, there is a problem to be solved for me on sort of the left back area of the squad, I'd say.
Definitely.
It might become more or less a problem depending on what happens to a couple of people in and around over the coming weeks. But yeah, that isn't the answer to the problem for my money whatsoever. Let's move on then. Liverpool have been linked with a move for Wolverhampton Wanderers midfielder Joao Gomez this summer. Now, this particular report says it won't be an easy one to do, but Ben Jacobs has said you should keep an eye on Joao Gomez. Liverpool like him as well, but the issue there is that Wolves are under no obligation to sell. He's not been at Wolves for long. Brazilian DM, of course. The DM position is one that's sort of come back onto the horizon in the past few days, actually. A lot of talk about Liverpool prioritising that as an area that needs some reinforcements. Lewis, Joao Gomez, do you like this? And on Wolves, I guess, they've just sold Max Kilman, of course, for what in my eyes is quite a lot of money, actually, for Max Kilman. So no wonder under no rush to sell anybody. But would you be going all out for somebody like Gomez?
I think he fits the profile. 23, did you say? He's 23 years old?
Yeah.
I think I saw a metric that was he's ranked in the top 95% of tackles, and I think it was interceptions across the top 5 leagues. You know, he's a very good player. Again, it just comes down to money. Is he going to be cheap? No, definitely not when they're under no pressure to sell. But yeah, long-term solution, very good player, very good on the ball, good presser of the ball. It seems like that would be a move that makes sense more so than, like we mentioned earlier, Kimmich. We want someone like Fabinho who's going to be in that role for a good few years and you can sort of build a spine around them. Yeah. Gomez probably could do with a little bit more proven in the Premier League. Yeah. But for the player that we've seen so far, I wouldn't be completely against it. It just comes down to money. But he does need to prove it just a little bit more just for my money.
No, I agree. There's a lot to like there, though. And I think one thing that sort of caught my eye, and I was thinking about this last night, because I seen the report a couple of days ago as well when it first sort of emerged, is the players he's keeping out of the Brazil side. Because we've just seen Douglas Luiz move for big money, and we've seen him be really impressive actually in the Premier League for Aston Villa. We've just seen him make that big switch to Juventus, of course. And another name heavily linked to Liverpool, Ederson, the Atalanta DM. And Joao Gomez, by and large, is playing ahead of those guys. And that, to me, in terms of credit in the bank, in terms of, you know, eye-catching little things going on, that's quite something there. There's clearly a hell of a lot of ability there. He's played in that Brazil side that contains, obviously, Rodrigo, Vinicius, playing alongside Bruno Guimaraes for the most part as well. So, yeah, I think there's something to this player and this type of player. And also, Lewis, as well, Liverpool have shown a tendency, and Wolves have shown a tendency, actually, more importantly, to do business with us. Yeah. So if we know the club that we could go to and potentially get a player out of, it's probably Wolves as well.
Yeah, and it's for them to get the amount of money they'd get for him. We've seen they're quite shrewd with their recruitment. They could use that. They could put that to good use in that squad. And it's nice having those working relationships with clubs like we saw with Southampton over the years. You know that there's not going to be any drama. There's not going to be any stress from it. This just seems like a player who, if it's another year down the line, everyone's going to be trying to snap up, because I think the CDM market is a bit dry at the moment for what a lot of clubs need. I don't see any reason not to do it. If it is a thing, it is just very much a case of he's this minute's hot commodity where everyone is talking about him. So, you know, the big clubs, so to speak, are all going to be talking about getting him in. I just want to see a little bit more from him to justify being in this squad.
No, I agree. I think Liverpool would want to as well, actually, for its worth. Just in terms of sample size, we know it was sort of previously muted under Michael Edwards' reign first time around. I know it isn't Michael Edwards at the helm of that anymore necessarily, but it was around the 160 game mark in terms of first team professional level they'd like to see. I'm not quite sure that stretches across every single league across the world, because he's only played 45 times in the Premier League up until this point. He's played a lot in Serie A down in Brazil, and there's some Libertadores games in there as well, which probably don't even take it to 160 just yet either. So in terms of sample size, they would be sort of undercut in terms of what they were looking at. But again, if there's enough there that they've seen, if they like him enough, he is a DM sort of in terms of stock and trade, but he's a ball playing one as well. I think there's a hell of a lot to like about Joao Gomez, I really do. So one to keep an eye on there, another name into the mix. Finally, Liverpool are reportedly poised to match the release clause of Spain ace Dani Olmo in a move which received Premier League rivals Manchester United lose out. By the way, on that, sorry, Paul Z, I think you mean Richard Rios, and yes, player. I've seen him linked to a couple of Premier League clubs, forgive me. I feel like it was Crystal Palace and maybe Fulham this week, but yeah, Liverpool. If you're watching, Richard Hughes, have a look at that kid. Like him a lot. Yeah, sorry, Dani Olmo. Release clause, Manchester United could lose out. What's not to like, I guess. And listen, for what it's worth, again, cards on the table, Dani Olmo's so good.
He is. He's so class. And we saw him last night. He's so good in one-on-one situations. He's very much enjoys cutting in from the left, going onto his right. I'd love to have him in the squad. He's so... I think it's something like he can play left winger, he can play midfielder. He's very Szoboszlai about him in that regard.
True.
I'd love to have Olmo in this team. I think he's class.
Yes, to all of what you just said, really. And the release clause, again, is similar to what I said with Frimpong earlier, is so tempting because it's so low for the calibre of football that we're talking about. However, you just mentioned Szoboszlai there, and you're right, by the way. But is the problem with signing Dani Olmo, if in so much as there is one, is the problem that we own Dom Szoboszlai, and we also own lots of similar players who play in lots of, like Harvey Elliott falls into this conversation. You know, Curtis Jones. You know, there's a myriad of players who all play in very similar roles. Like, again, love Dani Olmo. Think he's boss. And would I take him just to go into that circulation of like 8 or 9 players? Absolutely, I would. However, when we're coming to sort of ranking priorities and where the money's best utilised, I can't help but thinking, you know, the businessman and knowing FSG in me just goes, well, they're probably not going to do that then.
No, not at all. Like, looking out of rose-tinted spectacles in terms of, get him in, it'd be
why
great.
Not?
But
fantasy football world, you just do it, don't you?
Yeah, it's FIFA. It's FIFA Football Manager. But like, it's in a practical sense, absolutely right. We've got Jones, Elliott, Szoboszlai, McAllister, like Gravenberch, all these players, and it's mental to think that 12 months ago we were in a situation where we're like, we've got no midfielders, we lack depth, and now we could have too many. And
I think we do have too many.
Well, we do, and it's again, it goes back to what we were saying before about the front line. Like, if a player leaves, if someone does move on, which I'm hoping they don't, but we can't anticipate what's going to happen. If we did lose someone, Olmo would be the ideal replacement, but until then, there's no point cramming another player into this position when we've already got 6 or 7 players fighting for the same spot, and we don't even know. I mean, I don't anyway, but I don't know who the set midfield is. I don't know who the guaranteed starters are, like we maybe did a few years ago, which isn't a bad thing. But to put someone like Olmo in, who may prevent Harvey Elliott from developing, Curtis Jones from continuing his progression in the way he was, it just seems like it's going to cause more problems than it does solutions. And we've seen many squads over the years with too many players who can't figure out the best way to play because of it. No, absolutely, And again, a lot of people mention his injury record, saying the Premier League might be too physical, and they are things you have to consider because injury record is far from ideal, far from perfect. There, Ryan Gravenberch is another name we didn't even throw into the mix, as is Fabio Carvalho as well. By the way, he's not too dissimilar a player in terms of the areas of the pitch that he likes to play in. So Liverpool have got more than enough quality and depth in that area. And again, somebody mentions we should be looking at centre back and DM, and I'm inclined to agree with you, to be honest. Sound, I wanted to do a couple more bits before I do wrap up. Just checking the comments, make sure I've not missed anything massively important. I don't think I do, and that's not to say things aren't cool in there, but you know, don't want to miss any massively pressing questions. Just finally, we touched on it loosely at the top. The Euros are over. Trent Alexander-Arnold did not kick a ball in anger in the final. Kyle Walker may as well not have done either.
I was fortunate enough to speak to Henry Winter about the Trent Alexander-Arnold stuff over the weekend. What a guy, first and foremost. But he was sort of very middle of the road in terms of the Trent stuff. He loves Trent Alexander-Arnold, let's put it out there first. He thinks he should have found a way to get him into the side. I mean, what's been your take on his tournament overall? The fact he just hasn't played, really. And it feels like it's a crying shame, basically, that you got somebody that good and the England manager, for whatever reason, can't find a way of getting the best out of him.
Yeah, look, I'm a big England fan, which I know a lot of people around here tend not to be. It seems to be a bit of a, whatever. Trent is one of the most talented generational talent players I've seen, and I said it on BBC the other day, like, he's fantastic, he's superb. The issue is people are saying he can't play the midfield, which maybe he can't. But the issue is he was playing midfielder in a Gareth Southgate system, which relies so heavily on pass it side to side, keep possession. There's no desire to zip quick balls into the attackers. There's no desire to put it in behind 4 fast-playing players when you've got Harry Kane coming deep. I think Trent was sort of scapegoated a lot in the early stages of the tournament. Obviously, he had his moment against Switzerland, which was fantastic to see. He could play midfielder. He just can't play it in a system which relies on possession-based, boring football. He needs to be doing it in a fast flow and attacking system, which we could see under Slot.
He needs runners as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That's in behind, and not necessarily, you've got Phil Foden, Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham all occupying the same space and basically stand on each other's toes. That's no good to anyone, let alone somebody with Trent Alexander-Arnold's passing range. Copa America, as mentioned at the top, I stayed up all night to watch that, all 5 hours of my life in the middle of the night. Alexis McAllister, obviously, let's say at the top, Luis Diaz, gutted for him to miss out. Terrible scenes before the game as well. That needs addressing without a shadow of it. I don't really know or necessarily care who was to blame. All I do know is it needs sorting, because that was not good. Diaz, heartbreaking for him. Would have been boss for him to win it with Colombia, given what he's gone through in the past 8-9 months. However, Alexis McAllister and Argentina continue to win trophies in international footy.
Oh, he's so good, McAllister. And I think he's a very underappreciated player in a lot of regards. We've obviously, Liverpool fans, we love him, we know what he's capable of, but I think in the grand scheme of football, in the English game especially, he's a very undervalued player. For Argentina, he's been so important to them over the past few seasons. World Cup, Copa America. I think that in the Euros, Liverpool players didn't exactly excel. In the Copa America, they shined. Everyone looked like Diaz, like you mentioned there, McAllister, Nunez, obviously before everything that's gone on. They made a real good account of themselves, and I think it's given Slot a lot to think about going into this new season about who starts and who doesn't. McAllister in particular, I think I said them before, I don't know who the midfield is. I don't know who's going to start. I think McAllister needs
He's the one.
He's the one player that I'd be looking at and going, you need to be in that team.
You pick him and you work the other two out, for me.
Exactly.
Just based on his quality and ability and all the things you just said there, but based on his consistency, his level of form last season, he was absolutely sublime. A couple of dips here and there, you could argue, but for the most part, he was just consistently brilliant. Whereas Szoboszlai hit the ground running, absolute train, Steven Gerrard comparisons left, right and centre, and then fell off a cliff towards the end. So, interesting. Couple more things I want to go through there quickly. That was one I wanted to mention. Jonesy lad, you England fan. I don't get to speak to loads of them, if I'm being honest, so let's speak to you about it. England should be going all out to get Klopp, in his opinion. I mean, is that worlds colliding for you? What's your thoughts?
I mean, that's my dream scenario. Okay. Klopp could do a lot of good with that team, because you've got engines in that midfield in Rice, Mainu, Bellingham. You've got very good wingers. I've always said I think Saka would be a fantastic Jurgen Klopp player. I just don't want to see Klopp jump into a job too soon. I know club football was tiring for him because of the day-to-day work, but if Gareth Southgate's coming out and saying, I'm shattered after doing this England job, I don't want to see Klopp go through that again. He'll have a bit more time for his family. I just don't want him to do it until it's the right job for him. And as much as I'd love to see him in England, as much as I think he'd do fantastic, I just want him to have his time away from football. No,
I agree, absolutely. There was a links to the USA job as well, wasn't there, last week, which have been, since been kiboshed. Magpie 96, is it true Mac picked up a knock and came off of it? Wouldn't be surprised. He definitely came off. I'm not sure he was injured. He definitely came off in that game. Like I say, I watched it. Wouldn't be shocked if he picked up somewhat of a knock, because it was physical at times. Like McAllister was at front and centre of that, given as good as he got as well. But he didn't look too injured to me in the celebration and stuff, so I wouldn't be panicking too much. And a couple of people earlier on as well asked if Darwin Núñez is suspended. We haven't heard anything further since the other day on that. And again, I gave my opinion on it. Hopefully he gets away with it, in inverted commas. And I'm aware of what happened. I'm aware it all went a little bit crazy, but the sort of the mitigating circumstances in around it and what was going on in the stands, and it was just hopefully they get slapped with like a fine or like something like that, and they can all move on with their lives. Nigel Smith says the youth was really good the World Cup, as was Salif Diao, and we signed the both of them. Sound Lewis, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody else, thanks for commenting, thanks for keeping us ticking along the way. I will see you again soon. Take it easy.